Grief is such an overpowering emotion, especially after losing someone so close to you. It can take months, years, even decades to get back to normal, if that's even possible after experiencing a significant loss. This podcast was created to help you move through and release the emotions, allowing you to heal the hurt and begin living again. Listen in as I chat with medical professionals, grief workers, and people who have first-hand experience in losing a loved one, what their experience has been, and what they did to help heal themselves and those around them. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I believe there is always a silver lining if you're willing to look. Welcome to the Release Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Release Grief Podcast. Today I'm here with Melissa Hatcher. I'm super excited to chat with her. No, it is not Michael Hatcher. I know it says that on the screen, but it is Melissa Hatcher, and that's okay. Grief is a major thing that touches all of us, and it feels even more personal when it's another child. And so today I have Miss Melissa on, and she's going to tell me about her grief experience that she's had and the reason that brought her onto the podcast. Welcome, Melissa. Thank you so much for being on here with me and sharing your story with our listeners.
Thank you, Faith, for having me on. It's an honor to be here and to tell my story and to talk about my son.
Yeah. So, what was your son's name, first of all? I love names.
Max.
Max.
Mm-hmm.
Such a strong name. I love it.
Right.
And so tell me about Max. Tell me the story.
Max was the fourth of my children. He was my baby. Aww. And yeah. And my two oldest were grown and gone from home and married with kids, and Max still lived at home. And he didn't get his driver's license until after high school. So Max and I were like buddies. I picked him up every day from school, and we would just do stuff. He would go to work with me, or we would go out to eat, or we would go shopping. But we spent a lot of time together. And so he asked me one time, is it weird that I'm 17 years old and my mom is my best friend? And I said, it's not weird to me because you're my best friend too.
Right.
So we just had a very close relationship. He was a loving child. He would come up and say good night every night. He was funny. Oh my gosh, he was the funniest person I've ever known. Just making jokes, and he could do interpretations of anything and anybody, and nothing was off limits. You know, he would even do an interpretation of Jesus. Probably he's probably doing that in heaven now.
Right.
But, he was just a lovely person, and he was 19. Like I said, he had graduated from high school. He had his first big boy job. That's what we called it, his big boy job. And he was just coming into his own, you know. Max was not into drugs or alcohol or anything. He was just a good kid, and he died in an accident, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. It just happened. And
a vehicle accident?
Yes, he was driving his truck. He was on his way. Happened on December 12th, 2020. So it's been 3 years, 3 months, and some days. He was on his way to his brother's house for family night. It was during the Advent season, and we were all there waiting to do our family tradition of lighting the Advent candle. And Max never showed up. And also his sister Megan was living at home that time. She's 3 years older than him, 4 years older than him. And she didn't show up either. So, you know, we were a little bit worried, but I mean, they're young adults, you know, okay, maybe no big deal. But when we got home and Max's truck wasn't in the driveway, and Megan said Max had left hours earlier to meet us at Marcus's house, that's when we started to worry a little bit. And all of us had just downloaded the Life 360 app on our phones. And so we were able to track down where Max's phone was. And I didn't know the address, and Megan didn't know the address, but my husband did. He realized that it was the because he worked for the city. He realized it was the city wrecking yard,
Oh
and so
no.
he automatically thought, Max has been in a wreck, but he didn't tell us. He said, "Okay, I'm going to go
Yeah.
where his phone is, and you guys stay here." But of course, Megan and I had our own ideas. We're like, Max's truck probably broke down. He's probably walking to his brother's house. Let's go the route we think he would go, and let's find him.
Right.
So we start driving over there, and we were a little bit in a frenzy. So because we can't
Yeah.
find Max. Max is the baby of the family. We all love him. We're like, "Where's Max? Where's Max?" And so I mean, we just go in all states of dressed and undressed. We just went.
Yeah.
And I called my son ahead of time and said, "Hey, did Max walk over to your house? We think his truck might have broken down." He said, "He's not here, Mama." And I said, "Okay, well, we're going to drive the route that we think he would go. And Daddy's going to see where his phone is. So, just watch out for him. Let us know if he makes it." And then he called me back not 5 minutes later and told me that Max's car had been in an accident and Max had been taken to the hospital in an ambulance. We didn't know which hospital. And
Right.
so we just do like a U-turn and head toward, we live in Fort Worth, Texas, and there's like a hospital district where all the big hospitals are.
Hmm.
And we head in that way. And I'm like driving, and Megan is having a panic attack in the passenger seat, and I'm like calling hospitals, and we found him at the county hospital, and they said he was in ICU. And I knew what ICU stood for, but my daughter didn't, and so I knew this was going to be pretty bad.
Right.
So when we got there, long story short, we all eventually convened at the hospital. um, Max is lying in the bed. He's 6 foot 6.5 inches tall and very, very thin. So he was just laying in the bed under a clean white sheet. He didn't look bloody or broken or anything. He looked beautiful, like he was sleeping. He looked like an angel to me, of course. He had a little scratch, like right above his eyebrow, and they had a tube going. I'm not sure if it
Hmm.
was in his nose or his mouth. Um, but other than that, he looked fine.
Yeah.
And I thought Max was just sleeping, or Max was maybe in a coma. I had no idea that Max was dead. Um,
But when you went in there to see him, he was already passed, and they let
he,
you in there to see him anyway?
because in the state of Texas, um, first of all, his accident was so horrible that he sustained brain injuries in almost every part of his brain, and so he died instantly. But
Okay.
in the state of Texas, there's a law that you have to have a certain test that that determines that there is zero brain function.
Right.
And it's a Sunday evening, and those people are, few and far between who actually can administer that test.
Oh, I see.
And so they
Okay.
didn't just have someone there at the hospital,
Right.
and they his driver's license was there, and they saw that he was a donor organ donor. Sorry. And so I mean, his heart was still beating. His
Okay.
most of his but he was brain dead, and he had sustained head and chest injuries in the accident. And what we couldn't see was that everything was broken. I mean, all
Mhm.
of his arms, legs. I mean, he was just very broken underneath that sheet. And
Yeah.
but I didn't know because his heart was
Right.
beating, and they have the machines plugged up to him. So I'm holding out hope. And we
Yeah.
were there for over an hour, and I was in tuned on Max. I wasn't paying attention really to what they were saying. And I got on one side, my daughter got on the other, and we were holding his hands, which felt a little colder than normal.
Hmm.
But we were talking to him, and saying all these things to him, how much we loved him, and everything. Um, and I heard someone say brain injury, and it finally got in through my brain. I was like, what brain injury? What are you talking about? And so finally I was listening to what they were saying, and they were telling me basically that Max was already gone, but that they had to do the test, et cetera, et cetera. And
Right.
so I just was in denial. I was like, no, his heart is still beating. You can't tell me that my child is dead. His heart is
Right.
still beating. Why is his heart beating if you're telling me that he's dead? And so, like, my husband, tried to calm me down. He was like, Melissa, Max died instantly in the wreck from a fatal brain injury. And yes, his heart is still beating, but he's no longer here. This is his earthly body, and his
Mm.
spirit is gone. He's no longer with us. And oh my gosh, then it was just like
Yeah.
the the
Let
moment
the,
like you see on TV where the mom just falls to the floor, and it's the most horrible realization that you'll ever make in your life, that your
yeah.
child is actually dead. So yeah, it
So,
was pretty horrible.
yeah. Oh, yeah. It sounds extremely traumatic.
It was very
Extremely.
traumatic.
And so his heart was beating on his own, or were they had a
Yes,
machine?
his heart was beating on his own.
Oh my
And
gosh.
actually, when they did determine the test that he was brain dead, they did take him back because he was an organ donor, and we're able to donate his heart, his liver, one of his kidneys, and tissue for like two other kinds of tissue, including some lung material that saved a newborn baby.
Oh, oh my gosh. That's got to be heartbreaking and bittersweet all at the same time.
It is. And yeah, just knowing that that heart potentially still beats out there somewhere, because we haven't got to know the donors or the people who receive the donor organs. Just thinking that it's potentially still beating, it feels
Oh,
good.
absolutely. And just the thought of him living on,
Right.
even if it's not with you, it's with someone else.
Right.
But oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is, so he was 19 in a car wreck.
Hmm.
Um, that was the same with our daughter. She was 19 in a freak vehicle accident
Hmm.
when we lost her. And we didn't even get to go to the hospital to see her. We didn't need it because she was dead at the scene.
Hmm.
And in a hour and a half, 2 hours away from us, she had just moved, starting her life again, just budding, starting her life, living it. And then next thing you know, gone, just gone. And so her wreck was so bad that we couldn't have an open casket, we couldn't have anything. Um, and so it was heartbreaking, not even able to almost feel like you couldn't even say goodbye.
Right. And since then, I have met people in the grief community who didn't get that chance,
Yeah.
to see their child afterwards, much less see their child lying in the bed looking like an angel.
Right.
um, so I know that is a blessing. I'm very grateful for that, to be able to have to been to see him and talk to him even if he couldn't hear me, because I was able to say goodbye.
Right. And that's, it's comforting on another level. Like I believe that, even all the prayers that I've said, all the chats that I've had with her, like she was able to, I believe that she's heard me. She knows.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course I'm going to believe that she knows all
Yeah.
those things. So you said that Max was the youngest child and you have four other ones.
Yes, I do.
Um, how has this impacted like your family?
um it's been devastating, absolutely devastating. um my husband was a pastor, and So he had been a chaplain at Cook Children's Hospital. So he was a little more familiar with death and grief.
Mm,
I've not had anyone close to me or like a child, or I mean, my
right.
father died and my grandmother died. And of course, we were very sad at those times, but it was nothing like
Right.
this. And
Right.
so I just went to the deepest, darkest pit of despair that all mothers go to. I went there, straight there. And I doubted God and I questioned him and I yelled at him and I said, I hate you. And why did you do this? And all these other things, while my husband, his faith seemed steady. And my kids were divided. My daughter and I were kind of on the same page. We were like, why did God do this? Why did he take Max away from us? And um, then my oldest son was studying for the MCAT, um, for medical school, and he had to kind of containerize his
Yeah.
emotion. So he didn't get to grieve for the first 3 months because he was studying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also been interesting. Well, not interesting, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
Um,
I get it.
I have young grandchildren,
Hmm.
and they do, they were alive when Max was here, and he was the best uncle. And my daughter-in-laws do such a great job. I'm so thankful for them, and my sons, of course, of keeping Max's memory alive with their children, because they have photos of all of them with Max at different times, even.
Oh, that's nice.
And so they do. I'm so thankful for that they keep Max's memory alive and talk about Uncle Max, and it's just great. And then our youngest grandson was born after Max passed away. My daughter-in-law was actually pregnant with him,
Okay.
um, and so they named him Max's middle name, which is Bronson. So our youngest
Oh,
is little Bronson,
oh, how
and
cute.
he doesn't remember Max at all. But if you show him pictures and say, "This is Uncle Max. You're named after him," he can recognize him. So
Oh, that's good. That's super special.
it is.
Super special.
But I guess to answer your question, actually, it didn't divide us, but it kind of put us all on different islands because we all grieved differently.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
So
think our
different.
family was the same way. Like, I went, same as you, I went into the deepest, darkest pit. I went into what I call my box of nothingness,
Mhm.
and I camped out. Like, this is it. This is me. This is for the rest of my life. Like, I don't know where to go from here.
Right.
I'm a fixer. I can't fix this problem. I'm pretty much useless.
Hmm.
And it took me a long time to be able to come out of that and realize that there are some problems that just can't be fixed.
Hmm.
And I need to stop putting so much weight on my shoulders to be able to fix everything.
Hmm.
Um, and it took me a very long time.
I totally understand that.
It took me a very long time.
Yeah. Um,
Go ahead.
in the beginning, like I said, we all grieve differently. We tried to get together and talk about grief, but we were just so different. And it just became like not a pleasant thing for us all to get together and do
Yeah.
that. And so had I've always written. I'm a better communicator when I write than when I speak, obviously.
Mhm.
But I've always written. And so I just immediately started journaling, but my journaling was on Facebook. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like private, it was out there. And my family was like, why are you doing this? You shouldn't be doing this, putting all your business out there. But I was like, I'm not listening to what you're giving me for feedback. I'm listening to what other people are saying. Like, thank you for sharing your heart.
Yeah.
This is real. This is so good. I can't believe you're brave. They call you brave, even though you don't feel
I
brave.
call you brave. Yeah.
Brave enough to share all of this. And so I just kept writing. I didn't, after a while, I wasn't really writing for other people. I really was just writing for myself. And so became my journal on Facebook.
Oh my
And
God, that is.
so I wrote, um, that first year, I wrote about my grief in the moment while it was happening, while it was raw, while I'm still in that pit and my
Mm-hmm.
heart is bleeding everywhere. And it was unprocessed and it was unadulterated and unedited.
Yeah.
And actually, at the end of that first year, I compiled all of my Facebook posts. I did have some private journal posts, some poems I had written, just some other things, topics I wanted to write about, all text messages between me and my therapist and between me and my pastor and his wife. And I combined them all sort of like an anthology. I didn't call it an anthology, but it is
Right.
a combination of different writings. And it's from December. I started in December when Max died, and I wrote through December of the next year.
Oh,
So
wow.
I compiled it and published a book called Wrecked, um, Surviving My Son's Death, Year One. And so that's my contribution to the grief community.
I think it's beautiful because when you write, I think that when you write, when you literally put pen to paper or you type it all out, whatever, and you're going through those motions and you're having to relive everything, it's very therapeutic. It helps process that grief. I know when I was writing my first book, I was on a roller coaster ride. Like my mom has lived with us since my father passed away in 2005, and she's lived with us ever since. And when I was writing my book, there was dates. And so as a kid, we moved around a lot. And so my timeline, sometimes gets all jumbled. And so my mom, great with dates, great with all
Mm-hmm.
those things. And so I was constantly asking her to double check my dates
Mm-hmm.
and timelines to make sure that I wasn't putting anything out falsely.
Right.
And so she would come in the living room and I was camped out on the sofa in the recliner and I was just typing all day
Mm-hmm.
for a couple weeks, just getting the story out. Um, just doing the thing. And she would come in there and she never knew what she was going to find when she came in there. If I was going to be bawling my eyes out, laughing hysterically, staring off, not paying attention to anything around me or sleeping
Right.
or whatever, and she'd come in a couple times during the day and I would be in these various states.
Mm-hmm.
And but by the time that I was done, I felt like I had ran like a full marathon,
Oh yeah.
like the exhaustion that I felt
Right.
from writing that story.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to do that for a solid year in the midst of it, like, whoo, kudos to you, because I don't know that I could have done that. I guess I'm so private with that when it comes to that it feels a little bit too raw and too vulnerable for me.
Mm-hmm.
But if it worked for you, like amazing, that's amazing. And I love to tell people whatever works for you, do it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'm glad that you didn't listen to the family telling you to stop.
No, yeah, I've always been stubborn. I'm not going to do what they tell me anyway.
Well,
But
well, that's beautiful. I love that even more.
I'm glad that, I'm not glad that I had to write a book about my
Right.
son dying. That's not a good word. Um, if I had waited, it's not even been, it's been 3 years. If I had waited till now to look back and write the book, it wouldn't have been as raw. It wouldn't have been, I don't even think as real, because I was angry. Anger was my
Yeah.
number one emotion, and I was angry at God. And my husband's a pastor, and I work at my church. And, that's not something you do when you're in that position. And so if I wrote it now, I would say, I was so angry at God, and then it
Right.
would wrap up like, since then I've, worked on it and come to
I've
an
become
agreement with
healed
him.
and whole, and I'm this new processed. All the
Exactly.
things of perfection that we put out there, right? Because,
Right.
but grief is not this perfectly polished facade. Like I told you at the very
No.
beginning before we got on the recording, like everyone laughs at me when so before we get on our podcast recordings, I go through a little spiel that I tell every guest. Is like if you cuss, great. If you don't, great. Like, and every one of my guests usually laughs at me
Hmm.
because they're like, wow, that's just really out there.
Hmm.
But my thought is if you're grieving and you're in the midst of it, I don't want you to feel throttled in your
Hmm.
emotions or in how you're interpreting everything, like even responding to the questions that I'm asking you. Um,
Right.
because I want you to have a great experience on here as well.
Hmm.
Because we are talking about something that's extremely difficult to talk about.
It
Like
is.
talking about death and dying and grief and loss and never seeing a child again or never seeing your
Mhm.
spouse again or whatever. That's hard. That's
It's
hard.
hard.
And nobody's talking about it. People are not talking. They're just now starting to talk about it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
still, it's in this perfectly curated container, and
Hmm.
which needs to be shattered just as well.
Right. That's what my therapist said, that she she bought some of the books, and she said when they're ready to read, because I am a voracious reader, so I just started reading right off, and she was like, I'm not sure if you're ready to start reading, but I didn't listen to her either because I I mean, I've said this before, you can't take a college class on grief 101. I mean, it's just not something that you think about. You can never prepare yourself to lose a child. I mean, if you have your grandma, or your parent is older and they're dying, I mean, you can prepare sort of for that. You're still going to grieve. But when
Right.
it's an accident and it's an out of order death and it's your child, there's no preparation. And
No.
I forgot where I was going with that. But anyway, yeah, it's just insane. But oh, what she said was, um, I'm going to give this to every one of my moms and say, read the book. Just read the book. Because she said that in the conversations, in the text messages, in the poems, in the things, I went through every topic, every feelings, or stage of feelings, or whatever you want to call it, that grieving mothers go through. And so
Yeah.
she said this is good and it's raw, and she said it's not a bow book. I love that it's not a bow book. And I'm like, what's
What
a
does that
bow
mean?
book?
It's not a bow
And
book.
she said it's not wrapped up pretty with a bow on it at the end,
Oh, I love that.
because at the 1 year mark, we have this, mothers usually have this unspoken idea in our minds that that magical 1 year mark, when I get there, this is going to be, it's all going to be okay. It's going to be
Yeah.
better. When I get to
Um,
that 1 year, I'm going to be able to make it. But at that 1 year, I was no less angry at God. I was no less, I was maybe a little less in despair, but I was still grieving hard. So
yeah.
yeah, it's not. And that's why I said, if I had looked back and wrote a book from a 3 year ago perspective, it wouldn't have been as effective maybe for other mothers to read. Um, I've had a few who have, well, not a few, actually several, who have read it and told me that it helped them so much in their grieving journey, to know that you're not alone and that you're
Mhm.
not crazy, because
I
we
think
have some wild, wild emotions. We do some wild, wild things that other people would see as crazy. And so,
yeah,
even your family. And so, you
right.
think you're crazy. I mean, I remember one thing that I did that now I even kind of think it's crazy. But I don't know what they're called, but I'll call them funeral flowers. The
What are
ones
they?
on those. funeral
Oh,
flowers,
funeral flowers. Yeah.
ones on that stand with the three legs, and they're usually like
Yep.
metal green. Okay. You don't see those at birthday parties or graduations or um, bridal showers or anywhere. You see those where? At funerals.
Funeral.
That's why I call them funeral flowers. And I hated those funeral flowers. And of course, when you leave the church, they bring most of the stuff home. And there are only a few, but there were other, like plants and things too, and
Mm.
flowers. And they sat there, and people came and people went, and people sat and people ate, and we all cried and we all talked, and but then the people left and the flowers were still there. And it was like they were mocking me because I knew that they weren't alive anymore, but they still had a sweet smell. They still looked pretty. And I knew death wasn't pretty. And so I opened the front door, when I was at home one day by myself. And I think in my book, I said, I tossed those bitches out on the sidewalk or something, but I,
Yeah.
I did cuss in my book and my pastor approved it. But
Right? They're just
sometimes
words.
in grief you can't express a deep enough emotion. Sometimes you have to be able to use those words
You
that
do. I
because
agree.
they just, I don't know, somehow they help. But I tossed all the flowers out onto the sidewalk, and then I went out there and I just stomped them into the sidewalk, just made like a big pile of mush with that foam stuff and that metal and some pottery and all the flowers, and I just screamed the whole time, and that was cathartic. And
Yeah.
I also picked up one rose that didn't get smushed and like tossed it across the yard, and Max's dog went and fetched it. um so I did things like that when, and I didn't clean it up. I left it out there. So all my neighbors probably saw me, and my husband and my son came home and they're like, what happened here? And they're the ones that cleaned it up. So yeah, you do think that you're going crazy sometimes. And so to be able to read and relate to another mom who has done some things or said some things out of the ordinary for them, it makes you think, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. Okay. Maybe this is just normal grief. And it is. And it's really
It
good to
is.
have to relate to that.
Well, you have to think like your whole world just got turned upside down. Like it
Absolutely.
feels just like your whole world was turned upside down and stomped on and shattered, and you have all these broken bits now. But instead of someone else coming to pick them up, you have to do it yourself. You
Yeah.
have to figure out how to take care of this mess that you are now dealt.
Yep. And it's bloody and it's gross and it's everywhere and it's on the ground, all your bits, and they're getting dirt mixed in with them, and you can't find them all once you do start picking them up to put them back together.
And
There's
everybody's watching.
always going to
Everybody's
be a piece.
watching it. Everybody's got an
Everybody.
opinion, how you put it together,
Yeah.
how you do the things, how all of this stuff. And they've never experienced what you're
Mm-mm.
going through, but they
No,
all have the opinions to tell you what to do,
exactly.
how
Yeah.
you should process it, how you should put it together, how you should live your life, when you should be done with it. And it
Especially
is
that.
absolutely annoying.
It is. It is annoying. I wrote about that too. I wrote
Yeah.
about all that stuff in this book.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get the book because I haven't read the book yet. So I'm
Okay.
gonna have to get the book and I'm gonna have to read it because it sounds fascinating. I love it. And it's probably way more raw and real than mine is because I wrote mine multiple years after our daughter had passed.
Right.
Um, and so in 2000 so she passed in 2016, and then my 4-year-old granddaughter passed in a freak vehicle accident in 2021. And so it was, I still waited um, to write the book
Mhm.
until January of probably December 22, January 23 was when I published it.
Mhm.
And so I still waited because the emotions were so raw. I'm like, if I publish this now, they're going to commit me to an insane asylum. Like, that's literally how you feel because
How I felt.
everything is so raw, so vulnerable. And you're
Mhm.
like, this is not how normal society is.
Mm-hmm.
Like you put your shit in a box and you put a pretty bow on top and you walk around with your pretty little box and you don't let people know about the inside that's decaying and it's
Right.
rotting and the reformatting of the inside of the box that's going on and nobody, you just keep it hidden.
Yeah. I didn't. I didn't keep it
Right.
hidden.
Good. I'm glad we need more of those.
Yeah.
I did write in a journal because I'm not really a journalist or journaler, I should say, not a journalist, but a journaler. And so after Cassandra passed, I wrote for about 2 weeks straight, and I put all my thoughts and all my emotions in there, and that is
Mhm.
the closest thing to writing that raw and that real that I've done. Um, because otherwise, I don't know, maybe it's my growing up. You didn't put pen to paper. My father, so I've talked about this before on here, but my father was a criminal, and when he was a very loving father to me. Like, we had a great relationship. But he taught me things. And one of the things was you don't write anything down because if you do, it can come back and bite you in the ass. This is how they will put you in prison is by writing things down, keeping notes and keeping journals. And for some odd reason, that stuck with me.
Mhm.
And my entire life, I've wanted to become an author. And so I have these two worlds battling, like, okay, um, how do I fix this? And so it took me the
Mhm.
longest time to write the book because I'm like, these worlds are battling so hard. And so I don't journal because of that. And so just ish that I need to work through. But I find it fascinating for those that can journal and can write down and be real. Like I can do a video all day long and yell and scream and rant and rave in it, but you get me to writing something and I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah,
I think we're opposite because I I mean I can get up in front of people and speak like to 5,000 people and not worry about it, but like one-on-one conversations are very hard for me. And
okay.
I'm awkward at that.
Yeah,
And but writing was it just came natural, you know. It was
that's
just
good.
natural for me.
Do you have any plans to write any more books?
I do actually. Yeah.
Oh, yay.
Mhm. Yeah, I do. But I have grief brain so bad right now. I don't know that I could string three words together that made sense because I just, grief brain. Um
Yeah,
I just that's why I'm even slow now. I mean, because I can't always my mouth and my brain don't go as fast as they used to. Can't put it together to fast enough to say it.
well, you're still processing. It's still healing. I didn't realize until probably 2 or 3 months ago that I had PTSD from losing my daughter. I didn't even realize it. Didn't even cross my mind. And then so when I lost my daughter and then I lost my granddaughter, that sent me into a PTSD and I didn't even know it. Had no clue. And I was in shock. Like the things that you learn, like, and so for grief brain, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the
Who
case I
knew?
have it now because I can't remember anything.
We have a whole vocabulary. Once you enter the grief community, the club that no one wants to be in, right?
Right.
Um, you learn this whole other life existed, that life about death, that nobody talks about, nobody shares before it happens. It's just something that when it happens to you, you have to educate yourself
Yeah.
and educate others. That was
Yeah.
another big part of me writing, was to educate other people.
Yeah. It's just so sad that a lot of people don't want to be educated on the grief world. They want to stick their head in the sand and not even listen.
So true,
I've got a lot of
especially
those
in
people.
churches like where I work. But let me tell you, my therapist has told me some horrible stories about different clients whose churches have just not been, I mean, she hasn't
Yeah.
been like, whose churches were, she just says, you don't know how awesome your church was to you guys because
Yeah.
they loved us and they kept loving us for months, not just like a week or two,
Right.
and yes, I worked there, and they let me take 5 months off. I mean, who
Yeah.
does that? Usually people get three
Right.
days, you know, and
Mhm.
they let me come back on my own time and in my own capacity as much as I wanted to. And they've been such a blessing, such a blessing. I can't imagine not having them there to help me with that, because that was just a gift. It was a gift I was given.
Right.
And also to have my pastor's wife also was a chaplain. She was full-time chaplain at Cook Children's Medical Center, retired now. And then before that at the VA hospital. So she also is very familiar with grief. And
Mhm.
so she like knows all the things, and she doesn't judge. And she's just like, say what you need to say, do what you need to do. What's your biggest emotion? I was like, anger. And she was like, okay, well, Lee has a machete. That's what my pastor's wife
Right.
told me. Lee has a machete. And if you want to go chop trees and bushes, I'll go with you. And
Yeah.
so just really sweet and helpful. You can be sweet and
It
not
is.
helpful, but they were
Yes.
sweet and helpful.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be one of those things I would call I fondly termed raging responsibly. So
Hmm.
in a beautiful capacity, but you're going there for a purpose and you know what? Taking it safe,
Hmm.
but getting that anger out because if you don't get the anger out, like it will consume you.
It consumes you. I do have to say it's not in the book because, like I said, it's not a Bo book, but it took me 2 full years and another tragedy that wasn't death, but almost as traumatic as death happened in our family that brought me to the point where I was like, I, I can't be angry anymore. If I'm angry, I'm not going to survive. It's eating me up. And so I had to like a come to Jesus meeting with myself and with God and be like, take it away. Just take the anger away because it's so strong that I'm not going to be able to not be angry unless you do something supernatural and take it away from me. And thankfully he has. I mean, I was still angry at like dumb people and stuff, but and I still question him, like, okay, show me how this is going to work out.
Yeah.
But I'm not angry anymore. I don't blame God for Max's death anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's amazing. I love that because it's a choice. It's a
Yeah,
choice you get to choose to make.
right.
Um,
I
and if
didn't
you
have
choose,
anybody to blame. I mean, it was an accident,
yeah,
if Max had been no drugs. If Max had been smoking, I don't know what he
right.
smoked. If he had been smoking drugs or taking drugs or if he had been drunk, then I would have had a reason to say, oh, well, or something to blame it on, It was just a freak accident, so absolutely nothing to blame it on. And you want to blame it on something. And so since
Yeah.
I had nothing, I blamed it on God.
Yeah. Well, you want to make sense of this unsensible situation. And that's the only way. It's like the first thing is anger. It's like, why? What? I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand. Like, why is this happening? Like, she's supposed to, or he's supposed to outlive me, not me outliving them. And so then your brain goes into this, this
Mm-hmm.
whole spiel and it kicks it off and it makes you very angry because stuff's not playing out how you thought it was supposed to.
And especially when you have given your life to the ministry and you've raised your kids in the church and then one of them dies, you're like, what are you doing? We gave you our lives. We
Right.
brought you our children. We trusted you. And now you just take them away. I mean, it's
This is sacrifice. Like,
almost like
what's
a
going
righteous
on?
indignation. Why did we do all these things? Why do we serve you if this is how you're going to treat us? you know,
Right.
and of course that's irrational thinking, but it is how I was thinking.
I think it's how a lot of people think because I thought the same thing. Like it's like you're doing what you can. You're doing what you think is the best path for you, and if you're in the church, then doing the church stuff. And when something like that happens, like you lose a child, it just all of that just goes right out the window and you're just like, well, what the actual F? Like, come
Yeah.
on. Seriously?
Yeah.
This is how you're going to treat me after my faithful years that I've been with you? And it's almost like, I mean, we live here on earth and the only thing in life we are guaranteed is death. The
Hmm.
only thing in life. And it's a harsh reality, and I think it's something that we absolutely need to talk about more. So I'm super excited to read your book, especially with the rawness and the realness in it, because I don't think we have enough of those out there, and it's hard. Most people can't write it at that point because it's too raw, it's too real. Like for me, I just completely shut down for months,
Yeah.
and there was nothing. I literally didn't care about anything. I didn't care if I lived. I didn't care if I died. I didn't care if my family fell apart.
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
care. I didn't care.
Me too. I mean, we were like 2020, right in the middle of pandemic, and
Mm,
my kids were like, "You need to get your shots. You need to get your shots." And I was like, "Why?
yeah, my four.
Before? Come on, COVID, bring COVID on. I want COVID. I want to die.
Yeah.
I want to
That's
be
a
with my
reality that people do not
family."
talk about enough is that when you lose your child, you just want to die so you can be with them. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter how many other ones you have or what you're leaving behind here,
Hmm.
that rawness and that realness, you want to be with them.
Exactly. I know day two, my daughter and I were in her bedroom talking, and I think that Max's death, of course, affected all of us, but it affected the two of us the most because they were best friends. She had been back home for a couple of months, and um, we were just very loving and close family. And so I'm saying, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to be with Max. And she's like, Mama, please don't say things like that. You can't leave me too. You can't leave me too. And I'm like, oh, Megan, you're the only reason I'm still here. Please don't leave me either. And so we made each other a promise that day that we would live, choose to live, not kill ourselves, and live for each other and live for Max and carry on his memory. And so that day we made a little pinky promise, and then we went to the tattoo parlor. And I don't know if you could see it.
I see
It's
it.
kind of blur. It's blurry, but it says promise. We both got
Oh,
the word promise tattooed on our pinkies. And man, I tell you, there have been days that if I didn't have that ink there to look at and that promise that I made with her to hold on to, I may
yeah.
not have made it.
That's a beautiful tattoo. I love it. My daughter and I went and we got our other daughter that passed. We got her laugh tattooed on our arm. And so there's a
Oh,
program that we can scan it and you can actually hear the laugh from the sound bite that it was taken from. And so we have matching tattoos as well, my
that's
daughter
cool.
and I.
I've never seen or heard that. That's really cool.
I haven't gotten one for my granddaughter yet. That's my next in the works, but I gotta find the perfect one. She was 4. I'm like, I don't know what to get for her. So we shall see. So
Yeah. Yeah.
where can everyone find your book?
My book is on Amazon. I published it on Amazon. She's a big one. Can't
Good.
speak. But like I said, it's December through December, the whole year. And it's called Wrecked, Surviving. I don't know if you can even see that.
Yep, surviving my son's death, year 1.
Year one. And although it says year one, even if you're like in year 3, 4, 5, you can relate to the writing. It's not just for people who just lost their children or who are still in year one of their grief. It's for everyone. Everyone can relate to it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely feel that anyone could relate to it. Just because of the emotions and it's interesting for me and very therapeutic for me to see how others go through their grief.
Right.
so that I can know in my mind that I'm not crazy for how I'm thinking, acting, and feeling. Um,
Right.
or the thoughts that I've had, all the things. And even, this is going on, multiple years for us since their passing. And it's just, but I still sometimes feel like I'm crazy for how I think and how I act and, all those things.
Right.
And, you know, it's just a natural part of life.
Yeah, it never, I mean, I know people after that 1 year magical mark that you think you're gonna hit, and um, you give yourself that 1 year, but people give you like 6 months. And
I
at
don't
one
even think they
year,
give
if
you that long. That's like very
yeah,
generous.
that's true.
It's more like 2 weeks.
But
And after that, you better have that
definitely,
bow on top.
definitely when you're at 3 years, no one wants to come to a candlelighting memorial, but no one wants to have a birthday party for your dead child, so it's really up to us mothers. We carry their memory,
Yes,
we say their names, we
we
talk about
do.
them, we buy them presents.
We honor them.
We honor them, we keep that relationship alive. We have to, because
Absolutely.
even though our child died, the love didn't die and the relationship didn't die. And
Right.
so we can absolutely carry that on. My son wore polo shirts, Ralph Lauren polo shirts, because I liked them and I bought them for him. And we would get them, you can get them at Dillard's, they're really expensive, or you can get them at Marshall's or Goodwill. So
Yeah.
we did all three. But it was just a couple of weeks ago. So this is another thing that I thought I was crazy. And I shared with my grief group on Facebook, which is called Grieving Mamas. Um,
Oh, I love it.
it's all moms who've lost children, grieving mamas. You can look that up and request to join. That'd be great. Um, I shared with that group, I said, I just went thrifting for the first time in 3 years because thrifting was triggering for me because Max and I like to thrift together. I just went thrifting for the first time in 3 years, and out of habit, I walked down the men's shirt aisle, and lo and behold, I hit the polo mother load. It was like size large, which was Max's size, and it was 8 polos, all different colors, different styles, and they were brand spanking new. They'd
Mm.
never been worn, never been washed. I bought those polos. I bought them for Max, and I
Good
brought them
for you.
home, and I washed them, and I put them in his closet. And my people think I'm crazy. Like, none of us can wear a size large. Why'd you buy them? I didn't buy them for you. I said,
They weren't for you.
yeah, they weren't for you. If you can lose some weight and you want to fit in them, I might give you one or two, but I didn't
Yeah.
buy them for you. And so that was something that I did even recently that people would think is crazy.
I don't think it's crazy. I think it's a mother who loves her son. That's what I think. We just had, so every year, so my daughter that passed was my stepdaughter. And I had been with her father since 2005, and she passed in 2016, so 11 years. Um, and we get along, or I get along with his ex-wife very well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we made it a point, like I've always made it a point when I met my husband to get along with his ex-wife because they're the mother of these two children that are now going to become part of my life. And I don't want these children to grow up and have to choose, okay, I'm going to have this party, whether it's, a bridal party or a birthday party or an outing or whatever, and have to choose which mom I'm going to bring or which family it's going to be with or have that
Right,
separation and segregation.
right.
And so we just always made a point to get together. Like we had grad parties together and different things like that. Well, now since Cassandra's passing, like we've been on vacation together. Um, we have monthly poker parties where they come over or we go to their house and then we have another family that's involved and we get together and we have food and we have fun and we have community. We have random card nights where they'll just show up. Hey, you guys doing anything this Friday night? You guys want to play cards? And we're like, sure, come on over. And just it's turned into this amazingly beautiful friendship that we have that probably wouldn't be this way
Right.
if we hadn't lost Cassandra.
Hmm.
but I'm glad that it turned into this as opposed to, not, if that
Right.
makes sense. It's
That is beautiful.
And so
Um,
every year we get together and we do a birthday party for Cassandra. And so we do it at the bowling alley. And because I don't want to, I don't, well, my big thing is I had a hard time celebrating the death date. I'm like, I don't want that to be a celebration. I would
right.
rather it be her birthday as a celebration.
Mhm.
And so we do a birthday party at the bowling alley and we rent lanes and we invite the community to come, you know, connect with us and for us to
Right.
connect with them to see how they're doing. And so we have a good 50 people turnout that come to the bowling alley with us. And I make, this year I made cupcakes. I don't always make cupcakes, but this year I made cupcakes and we bowl and we have fun and we chat and we laugh and we build community.
Yeah.
And that's our way of, celebrating her and her birthday and all those things. Is it hard? Absolutely. Like
Mhm.
it's still hard. There's still
Mhm.
triggers. It's not perfect, but we're making the best of what we can with what we have. And so I think you buying those shirts is absolutely perfect for you. And I love it that it's not you're not listening to the voices around you that are saying that you're crazy or making you feel crazy or whatever for doing
Mhm.
that. You just continually doing it. I absolutely freaking love that.
Thank
Like,
you.
that makes me happy.
That's what a lot of the moms said too. They were very encouraging. So,
Mhm.
like put wash those shirts and put them in his closet, and they were very
Absolutely.
encouraging. Um, you said something that made me think about you talked about birthdays. Max's birthday was March 26th, so just like a week ago.
Oh,
And
wow.
my family doesn't want to get together and have a party anymore, but I still want to acknowledge it somehow. So I decided to DoorDash crumble cookies to my son's family in Oklahoma, to my grandchildren. And I said, I love you, Langston. I love you, Cassius. Happy birthday, Uncle Max from Mimi. And then I sent it to my other son here in Fort Worth. I love you, Lazarus. I love you, Tirza. I love you, Bronson. Happy birthday, Uncle Max. Love from Mimi. And so whether they wanted to celebrate it or not, I did. And so I did it in the way that I wanted
Yeah.
to, where
Yep.
he was still honored. My kids knew that I loved them. And I just wanted them to remember that, to say happy birthday, Uncle Max. So
Yes. And that makes so that's what funny is our daughter's birthday is March 10th.
really,
We have so many similarities with this
yeah,
going on. Like, oh my gosh, this is unreal.
yeah, yeah.
So I think just finding little ways. So I have had an absolute blast chatting with you, and I feel like I could sit here all day and just chat with you.
I
Like
know.
that's how easy the conversation
I
is.
know my mind is going, tell her this and tell her this story and tell her this story. But
I know. Well, maybe we'll have to do something later and do a longer one
oh,
or
okay.
something. Maybe so. Um, but I have anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
um, yes. In honor
Okay.
of Max's birthday, which was last week, I would like to read from my book. Um, when we went his first birthday after he died, our family took a trip to the beach. He loved the beach. And he had told his sister, if I die, don't bury me, don't put me in the ground, bring me to the ocean. And so our whole family went on a beach trip and we were able to spread his ashes there. And so this is what I wrote about that. We stood ankle deep in the ocean on the beach. You first five of us who have felt your loss the deepest, who love you the most and knew you best. And we honored your request. The sky was dark and the ocean was darker. The wind picked you up and carried you far out into the sea and beyond. And still we stood, five sentinels guarding your memory. The sand and the sea, the wind and the waves, the releasing and connecting, the hoping and grieving, the love, oh, the love. And then you came back to me, standing forlorn on the shore. and surrounded me in one last embrace.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Um, we did to spread the ashes in that last part is the most special to me because the last handful of ashes that got thrown up, the wind blew them straight on me, in my face, in my mouth, in my eyes, in my all over me. And it was strange, but it wasn't gross.
Right.
I had I wanted to feel close to him. And even like with the ashes, I just had this strange, crazy desire to like taste them and smell them and just be close to them. And my therapist said that's not crazy, that's normal. And it's just you wanting one more embrace. And the fact that the wind blew them back on me and gave me that one last embrace. It was beautiful. Something I
That
always
was
treasure.
beautiful. I have not cried on a podcast so much in the whole time I've been podcasting until this one. Um, it just little things hit so hard. But I thank you so much for sharing and so much for publishing that raw and real booklet out there for others to be able to read it and understand they're not going crazy.
Right.
That this is unfortunately a group that we are now cast in. Um, but there's others, and
Right.
there's a community,
Yeah.
and there's support, and
Mhm.
there's love, and there's
Exactly.
all the things that you could think of needing in this group, and it is so welcoming.
Right.
Um,
It's been 3 years and I am just finding a grief community. And it's very helpful.
it
It's
is
great.
very helpful because it wasn't there when my daughter passed. I didn't, especially not for stepmothers. There's
Mhm.
nothing.
It
Still,
wasn't
there's
there.
nothing.
It wasn't there in COVID either. It all had died away during COVID and it's coming back. It's making a resurgence. And it's
Good,
very, very helpful. Yeah.
good. So like I said, I am so thankful you came on this podcast, and I've had such a blast chatting with you.
Thank
Um,
you.
and listeners, if this podcast resonates with you, please share it. If you know someone that's going through a very rough time in their life after losing a child, after losing a loved one, share this podcast episode with them, and just wrap your arms around them and show them so much love for what they're going through because it doesn't get easier. We just learn how to deal with it. That's all that there is. And thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this special episode of Release. All the links plus a few extras are posted in the show notes below. And if you think someone you know could benefit by listening to this episode, please share it with them. And as always, keep going, keep being, keep doing. You are amazing.